Here is a polished and rewritten version of your script. I preserve the dark, enigmatic, and engaging tone, while providing smoother transitions with strong hooks and connecting elements so that the audience continues to be hooked until the end. Imagine I told you that one of the greatest minds of all time learned something so horrid about human nature that he felt it should never be spoken. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist who delved into the hidden corners of the unconscious mind, stumbled upon a discovery so raw, so uncomfortable, that it forever changes how you'll see the people around you. This isn't some new feel-good self-help idea. Jung called it the shadow truth of human nature, a psychological reality so sharp and unforgiving that when you get it, you'll never see relationships in quite the same manner again. And here is the bitter truth. The very same people who profess that they love you, support you, and would be there for you are the same individuals who would quickly forget your good deed in a few days, but cling to your error for life. So are you ready to pull back the mask that all human beings wear? Because once you see what Jung discovered, there is no going back. Years of studying the human mind, Jung discovered that there is something he referred to as the gratitude paradox, a way of thinking trap that shows us the worst about how our brains actually work. Imagine it. Weeks, maybe even months, spent at a friend's side during their crisis. Your time, your effort, your money spent for theirs, your lifeline to them when they were drowning. And then, a few weeks after the crisis has passed, it is like none of that ever happened. Now pause for a second. Think of your own life. Are you able to recall every time someone was kind to you last month? Last year? Be honest, and it will offend you. Jung revealed that the human mind has what he called benefit amnesia, an unconscious defense mechanism, which leads us to remember positive experiences much more rapidly than negative ones. But why? For to remember kindness is to owe, and owing is something the ego resents. So the unconscious mind performs a bit of sorcery. It erases the memory of generosity, but keeps every slight, every wound, every unkind word. That surprise birthday you spent weeks organizing erased those middle of the night phone calls when they needed you most, deleted. But the moment you lost it in the heat of the moment, that moment is burned into their mind in high definition, relived over and over, as Jung eerily capsulated. The human mind is a museum of grievances and a graveyard of kindnesses. And yet, this wasn't even Jung's most disquieting discovery. After analyzing thousands of patients, he uncovered what he privately called the universal deception, the uncomfortable truth that every single person, no matter how genuine they appear, is guided by hidden motives. That sweet elderly neighbor who always waves at you, she's unconsciously weighing whether you'd help carry her groceries or call the police if things get noisy. That so-called supportive friend who seems always to be cheering you on. They're secretly checking how far your success intrudes on their own ego. This isn't manipulation. It is worse. In Jungian psychology, our shadow self, that hidden unconscious part of our personality, is working ceaselessly in the background, shaping every relationship, even with our most sincere relationships. Unconsciously, the mind calculates, how does this work for me? Even the mother, who appears forever selfless, is, at some level, acted upon by survival forces and unconscious desires. Altruistically giving mother, she is unconsciously programming you for future loyalty. So when frailty arrives with old age, you'll feel obligated to look after her. That friend who remembers every single detail of your life, they're not just being thoughtful. They're quietly building emotional capital for the day when they require your help. And here is the scary thing. You do it too. While you are listening right now, your own subconscious mind is already working out how to apply this knowledge to your benefit, how it will alter the dynamics of your own relationships in your favor. Carl Jung called it the inevitable shadow dance. We're all doing it, every single one of us. We're unconsciously manipulating others, while convincing ourselves our intentions are good. But Jung's research did not stop there. He made an even more disastrous finding. a hidden pattern for why trust so often shatters. He called it conditional loyalty. Think about it, that boyfriend who vowed they'd love you for all eternity. Jung's case studies revealed that commitment has an expiration date, directly linked to how well you keep fulfilling their present needs. That friend who is like a brother or sister, on a subconscious level, they're constantly doing the math to see if your presence elevates their social standing or diminishes it. To Jung, human relationships aren't the impenetrable, unbreakable bonds we imagine them to be. No, they're fragile agreements, held together only as long as both sides continue to benefit. He discovered that any relationship possesses unconscious scorecards, unseen tallies of give and take, advantage and cost. And when the balance tips, the relationship begins to unravel. Lose your job, fall ill, become invalid. Notice how quickly the phone stops ringing. Jung documented this again and again. The friends who vanish when you cannot provide validation or opportunity. The colleague who becomes icy when you surpass them. The lover whose ardor dissolves the moment a better possibility arises. As Jung explained, their relationship was never really about you. It was about them staying comfortable. Love, most of the time, is merely the feeling people have when their needs are being met perfectly. And this leads us to what Jung believed was his most heartbreaking discovery, the loyalty mirage, the tragic consideration that unqualified loyalty, the kind that persists in spite of loss, illness, and failure, is not merely rare, but psychically impossible for most people. Ask yourself, how many people in your life would remain loyal to you if you lost everything? If your wealth disappeared, your status collapsed, your health fell apart, and you had nothing else to give? His verdict was chilling. For most people, the answer is zero. Not because of any wickedness, but because genuine loyalty demands a level of psychological maturity most never reach. Most so-called loyalty, Jung argued, is really utilitarian attachment. People hang together as long as the relationship feeds their emotional, social, or practical hungers. But strip away those benefits, and loyalty evaporates like mist. As Jung put it, we mistake temporary aggregations for permanent bonds, and then are shocked when people behave like people. The unpleasant truth, when circumstances change and people move on, they're not rejecting you. They're returning to the default setting of human nature. Self-interest. Think about your own work environment for a moment. Those colleagues who are like close friends, have you seen them during layoffs, when loyalty might entail giving up their own opportunity? Jung would say, until the moment comes, you don't know where their loyalty will be. One of the family manager, you've never had any idea what goes on after. You are no longer serving their agenda. Jung learned that genuine loyalty requires something that most simply lack, the ability to act contrary to self-interest on principle. But the kicker is how his observation is even more disturbing. This entire system is kept secret. Most don't even realize they possess a secret agenda, their selective kind memory, or their conditional loyalty. The person who recalls your sin, but not your kindness, isn't intentionally choosing to be unfair. Jung says they literally don't have any capacity to see it. Their shadow self, the aspect of the psyche they refuse to acknowledge, is the one manipulating, and their conscious mind is narrating an entirely different story. That is why it feels so futile to call them out on this behavior so often. You are asking them to confess patterns their very psyche is designed to keep hidden. This is the nobility myth, as Jung called it, the unconscious mythology we construct to preserve the illusion of our own goodness even when we act in ways we criticize in others. The friend who bails on you during times of need tells themselves they're saving their energy. The coworker who sabotages your promotion guarantees themselves they're simply being strategic. The family member who calls you only to request something, in their mind, they're simply reconnecting. And here is the bitter pill. Now that we become aware of these habits in others, we must admit that they also reside within us. That nagging feeling that is piling up inside you right now. It is recognition. The fact that you too have forgotten someone's compassion, calculated your loyalty, or justified your own covert agenda, as Jung put it. True psychological maturity begins the moment we stop pretending we're beyond such ordinary human impulses. So why do we have these habits in the first place? Jung's analysis revealed something astounding. Called character defects are actually survival strategies passed down to us from our ancestors. Forgetting favors prevents us from being manipulated by manipulative thankfulness. Remembering slights and betrayals reminds us to be on guard against possible dangers. Hidden agendas enable us to get an advantage in uncertain situations. Conditional loyalty made sense in a world where resources were scarce and trust had to be strategic. The problem, Jung realized, is that we're running ancient software in a modern world. Our psychology was designed for tribes fighting to survive, not for a civilization that preaches unconditional love and eternal loyalty. This clash creates what Jung called the authenticity crisis. We're trapped, unable to be purely selfless, yet unable to admit that we're naturally calculating. And so, what was Carl Jung's ultimate secret? The truth, he said, was almost too heavy to reveal. After all those years of searching the human soul, he concluded, true human intimacy exists, but only if we embrace the shadow truth. We need to end this charade of pretending that people are better than they are. We need to love them the way they really are, unaware of themselves, conditionally loyal, and wired for survival above all. Here is the paradox. If we let go of our illusions, we can now enjoy the few instances when someone behaves well beyond their nature. If we are aware that loyalty is fragile and rare, we cherish it when it happens to be genuine. This does not make us cynical. It makes us realistic. And what Jung discovered is that reality is the only ground on which real love can be built. Jung's concepts didn't just change psychology, they changed how we see human behavior. And once you really understand this stuff, it is all different. You'll stop being crushed when people forget your kindness because you'll recognize the psychological mechanism at work. You'll spot hidden agendas without taking them personally because you'll understand their universal human programming. You'll prepare for conditional loyalty without bitterness because you'll see it for what it is, the natural way most people operate. Carl Jung lived the final decades of his life with this shadow consciousness, and it transformed the way he approached every relationship. He still loved with all his heart. He still gave freely. He still demanded loyalty. But he did it all with eyes wide open. In his private writing, Jung admitted something astonishing. Once you see these patterns, you have all the power. You give kindness without expecting thankfulness. So your kindness is truly selfless. You see agendas without becoming manipulative yourself. You invest in relationships, but prepare for their natural unfolding. And you seek loyalty, not as a right, but as an extraordinary and precious gift. This is not about getting cold or calculating. This is about getting wise. Jung discovered that individuals who understand these shadow truths end up being more kind, not less, because they stop expecting people to be perfect. And here is the biggest irony of human psychology. When we let go of our expectation of perfection, we can finally love people for what they are. When we expect nothing, we learn to appreciate everything. When we accept the shadow, then we can see the light. So why did Jung caution that this knowledge has to be taken to the grave? Because it confers enormous control over people who are in illusions. With it, you can dominate those who demand limitless gratitude for fleeting favor. You can exploit those who cling to the illusion of absolute commitment. You can deceive those who think everybody's motives are good. Jung feared that this shadow information could emancipate or corrupt, depending only on the possessor's consciousness. That is the real test. Will you use it to become more truly human or strategically predatory? His restraint was not against hiding. It was against responsibility. It is a sign of psychological maturity to pierce masks people wear without having truth devour your sympathy. In the last years of his life, Jung sought to integrate this shadow awareness into what he called individuated consciousness, the rare state of seeing clearly and still loving intensely. For Jung, learning these things about human nature is where the task starts. Learning to live lovingly and compassionately with realistic expectation is the real work. That is, giving without concern for outcome, loving without requiring perpetuity, trusting with expectation of disappointment, hoping while still accepting reality. And this, Jung says, is the true test of integration. Not whether you become cynical, but whether you can remain loving when looking at people as they are. Can you be kind knowing that it will be forgotten? Can you build connections knowing that they will be conditional? Can you be loyal knowing loyalty will not always be returned? In his final chapter of his incredible life, Carl Jung took a breath of a secret so profound that he believed it must be breathed softly in the most sacred of sanctums. It wasn't the unconscious, even though he created that field. It wasn't archetypes or the collective unconscious, even though he created their meaning. It was more profound than that, much riskier to our illusions. The truth that he went to his grave with was this: true love only exists when we embrace the shadow, in others and in ourselves. Jung's final insight was at once disarmingly simple and utterly revolutionary. Human beings are not good or bad. They are human for most of history. We've divided people into tidy categories: the good and the evil, the heroes and the villains, the saints and the sinners. We've built religions, laws, and entire civilizations on the assumption that some souls are inherently virtuous, while others are irredeemably corrupt. But after sitting eyeball to eyeball with humanity's darkest secrets and brightest flashes of beauty for decades, Jung burst these illusions. He discovered that every person, without exception, holds the complete set of human possibilities, the capacity for exquisite generosity and horrific cruelty, the potential for profound wisdom and horrific foolishness, the capacity to love with radiant beauty and to injure with surgical precision. This wasn't speculative theory to Jung. It was the product of thousands of hours listening to confidences that would bring criminals to tears and witnessing acts of kindness so untainted they embarrassed saints. He saw a pillar of the community types have thoughts sadder than nightmares, and social outcasts exhibit hearts shining with radiance like sunlight. Jung's shadow theory was never a theoretical construct. It was his lived experience that every one of us is composed of multitudes. The nicest heart you've ever known has experienced moments of appalling selfishness. The most honest person you've ever known has lied when it was in their interest. The most devoted parent has, for a moment, resented their own child. And here is where Jung's breakthrough gets truly revolutionary. This is not a flaw in human nature. This is the blueprint. The shadow is not something to destroy or eliminate. It is something to acknowledge, integrate, and accept as a part of what makes us terribly and beautifully human. The person who refuses to admit they can be cruel is that much worse than the one who will admit it and hold it back. The one who thinks they can't be selfish will be selfish but assume they are noble. And the one who believes they are better than lying, they will lie so well to themselves that they lose all perception of reality. Most of our heartbreak in love isn't because of the way other people act. It is because of the conflict between who other people are and who we try to make them be. We fall for possibility. We become friends with illusions. We believe fantasies. And then, when reality finally penetrates, we feel deceived. Jung discovered that this ongoing pattern of anticipation and disappointment is the real barrier to authentic connection. For when we love someone because we think they deserve to be loved, we're not loving them. We're loving our projection. The wife who expects her husband to always be tough will collapse when he shows his vulnerability. The friend who needs always to be validated will be rejected when depression arrives. The parent who demands that his or her child fulfill their unrealized potential will find independence as rejection. But Jung provided a radical alternative. What if we loved people not in spite of their contradictions, but because of their whole humanity? What if real connection wasn't about molding other people into our ideals, but about embracing them as the flawfully beautiful, complexly magnificent creatures they are? And here is perhaps the hardest truth of all. Even our best impulses are often motivated by ulterior motives. The charitable person might be purchasing approval in private. The individual who is always ready to assist others may, in reality, be fleeing from their own issues. The one who never needs anything may merely be protecting a sense of moral high ground. But here is the thing. This does not render generosity untrue. It does not render compassion meaningless. It makes us human. Jung knew that our reasons are always mixed, that what we do often serves more than one end at once, and that our hearts hold a tangled mixture of altruism and self-interest. We barely understand ourselves, but people puzzled over whether their benevolent deeds were actually kind or secretly selfish. But that is the fallacy of either or thinking. Jung taught us a much deeper truth. We can do both. Our concern for others may be real even when it serves our own purposes. Our love may be real even though it reassures us also. Our help may be meaningful even though it makes us feel good as well. The freedom that Jung discovered wasn't about discovering ideal humans to love. It was about loving imperfect humans perfectly. This type of love doesn't require consistency, perfection, or the satisfaction of our every demand. It doesn't trap the other individual into an idealized position. It merely sees, receives, and loves the entire, messy, contradictory truth of who they are. And yes, this is hardest of all, because it requires us to forego our precious illusions, to love your wife or husband, even while knowing that they may be selfish, to love your friend, even while knowing that they may be thoughtless, to love your family even while expecting confidently that sometimes they will disappoint, enrage, and fail you. But notice the paradox. This love, realistic and unfanciful, is also the most intense. It can't be shattered by disappointment, because it never relied on illusion. It can't be shattered by betrayal, because it was built on the foundation of knowledge that betrayal is always possible. And it can't be dissolved by human weakness, because it begins with the acceptance of human limitation. The moment we truly know that individuals are human beings, not perfect, not predictable, not capable of providing all our needs, we are free to give without expecting payback, free to love without needing to possess, free to provide generosity as an expression of our own completeness, not an exchange for return. The person who serves without looking for help in return discovers a different type of happiness. The lover who does it without expecting to be loved discovers a deeper gratification. The giver who stops keeping score discovers a peace no contract could ever give. And let's be explicit. This isn't about being a doormat or tolerating abuse. It is about giving from choice, not necessity, from acceptance, not fantasy, from fullness, not need. Because when we release our patterns of relating to who we wish others would be and begin relating to who they actually are, something wonderful happens. We meet them in reality, not fantasy. It means looking beyond the anger and seeing the fear, behind the boasting and seeing the insecurity, behind the criticism and seeing the love. It means understanding that the one who hurt you was possibly acting out of their own pain, that the one who disappointed you was fighting against limitations you weren't even aware of, that the one who let you down was carrying loads you didn't even know you'd given them to bear. This kind of connection is totally more complex than fantasy, and yet it is infinitely more real because it is built not on projection but on truth, not on illusion but on acceptance, not on what we would like things to be, but on what is, and ironically enough, it is in this radical acceptance of human limitation that we are most likely to find humanity's greatest capacity for transcendence. You finally let go of illusions you begin to understand people more deeply and connect with them more authentically. Jung believed this insight was something to be carried to the grave. Not because it was shameful, but because it was sacred. Why sacred? Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It changes the way you view others, the way you understand yourself, and the way you navigate the messy web of human relationships. From that moment on, every conversation, every conflict, every relationship carries a quiet reminder. People are not simply good or bad. They are fully, painfully, beautifully human. When you feel anger at someone's selfishness, this truth whispers, you too. When you feel let down by weakness, it reminds you of your own vulnerabilities. When you feel hurt by thoughtlessness, it nudges you to recall the times you've been thoughtless yourself. And Jung insisted, this isn't a burden, it's freedom. Because now, you can finally love people for who they actually are, not for who you need them to be. You can connect without the exhausting burden of trying to change them. You can give without the hidden agenda of expecting something back. You can accept others without secretly hoping they'll transform into your ideal. This kind of love, clear, illusion-free, is, according to Jung, it's love that sees limitation and loves anyway. It's connection that acknowledges flaws and connects despite them. It's acceptance that recognizes imperfection and embraces it, not in spite of it, but because of it. This isn't the love of fairy tales, rom-coms, or feel-good motivational speeches. It's harder, messier, but infinitely more real. It's the love that emerges when we stop searching for perfect people and instead learn to love imperfect people with complete authenticity. And now, the secret is yours. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you let it make you cynical, expecting the worst because you know people will sometimes fail you? Or will you let it make you more compassionate, recognizing in others the same fragile, flawed humanity you carry in yourself? Will you use this truth to justify your own shortcomings? Or will you allow it to inspire honesty about your motivations and greater intention in your choices? Jung's wisdom doesn't come with step-by-step instructions. It comes with responsibility. The responsibility to handle the truth of human nature with care. The responsibility to love more deeply because you see more clearly. To forgive more readily because you understand more fully. Let this truth transform not just how you view others, but also how you view yourself. Let it become the foundation, not for judgment, but for the kind of love that has the power to reshape the world, one authentic connection at a time. In the end, perhaps Jung's greatest gift was this: the realization that our humanity, with all its contradictions, complexity, and imperfections, is not something to fix or escape. It is something to embrace. And it is in that embrace, messy, raw, and real, that we discover our deepest capacity for genuine love, authentic connection, and lasting peace.